Good afternoon and welcome to the panel session on graduate school before, during, and after. My name is Tek Ka Lim and I'm the moderator for this panel session. And what I thought I would do is...
Just checking.
Oh, just checking. Yeah, fine. We're just getting started. Yeah. That I would introduce the members of the panel, or they will actually introduce themselves. And I'm hoping that when you've heard what their backgrounds are, that you'll be convinced that they are people with the experience and the expertise to answer any questions you may have about life before, during, and after graduate school. All right. So in no particular order, but according to the way
we got some more. Oh, yeah. Come on in.
Welcome. Okay, we've got a panel of 5 people who have gone to graduate school, and a couple of them have actually decided that they want to work in graduate school, work in an institution where there's a graduate school. So as I said, I'd like to have them introduce themselves and say a little bit about what their backgrounds are, so that you will be able to realize that, as I said, they have the expertise to cover essentially any topic related to graduate school. Okay. Thanks, Paul. All right, so why don't I take it from whoever is closest to me, in this case, is Gabriella.
Okay.
So would you like to kick it off and then
sure.
tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I would love to kick it off. My name is Gabriella Marcua. I'm an assistant professor in the College of Computing and Informatics. So my background is in STEM, in computer science. Let's see, my path started when I tried out research as an undergraduate. I was studying informatics at UC Irvine, and my goal was I thought of minoring in everything from dance to film, and I did an internship that I hated, so I never went back to industry. I tried research and I loved it, and so I fell in love with research and found the subfield of computer science that I've stayed in ever since, which is human-computer interaction. So I study user experience and design interfaces, and so that I think that experience. I know you. That experience of trying a bunch of different things in college in order to figure out what I liked and what I didn't, what I was good at, what I failed at, what I wanted to try it again and persist at, is how I found something that I fell in love with, which was A, research, and B, the field of human-computer interaction. And so I decided as an undergraduate to go straight into my PhD. I guess I technically have a master's, but I got it along the way. So in some fields, you don't need a master's to go onto a PhD. So I applied to PhD programs in human-computer interaction across the US. And did my PhD at Carnegie Mellon for 5 years, and then got a job here. And it's really fascinating sort of looking back. I didn't have as linear of a path as it seems, but when I look back, I so fell in love with what I was doing back then that I'm essentially, the research that I do now with my lab as a faculty member at Drexel is very similar to what I was doing, what I fell in love with, the research that I was doing as an undergraduate that I fell in love with.
Amanda?
Hi, my name is Pia Rowley. I'm a rising third-year MD/MPH student at Drexel College of Medicine, and my goal is to become a practicing endocrinologist and integrate my public health background, my bioethics background, to design new paradigms to prevent and treat type 2 diabetes. So in 2015, I did my master's in bioethics at Penn, and I focused my project on diabetes quality metrics in federally qualified healthcare centers and the ethical underpinnings of that. And then I did my undergraduate I finished in 2012 at Penn and did a major in science, technology, and society, and a minor in nutrition. And my thesis project was also bioethics focused in undergrad, and I looked at the formation of the field of bioethics because it's a relatively new field. And my basic science research background was in neurodegenerative disease at the Center of Neurodegenerative Disease Research at Penn. I did a summer internship this past year at a Washington University School of Medicine in looking at a sodium channel that's in the pancreas that's crucial for insulin secretion in neonatal diabetes. And I also did some clinical research at Penn School of Nursing in copper absorption in bariatric surgery and the clinical trial for a new biologic drug that increases absorption in short bowel syndrome.
Thank you.
Hi.
Lindsey?
Hello everyone, my name is Lindsey Ehrlich. My role here at Drexel is Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions. I've been here for 7 years now. Before coming to Drexel, I earned my undergraduate degree in communication at Temple University School of Communication, summa cum laude graduate. From there, 1 year I worked at Fox Chase Cancer Center in the marketing department, and that's when I landed here at Drexel in 2010, where I've been here since. During that time, I also earned my Master's of Science in Communication here at Drexel. So besides working here, I'm also a proud alum. And in my role as Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions, I assist students like you with the application process. I attend on-campus and off-campus recruitment events, review applications for the programs, and I also work very closely with the faculty members here at Drexel. One of my favorite parts of my job, also most rewarding for me, is assisting applicants. This is a very big time in your life, deciding graduate school or not, and all the questions that go with it. So I'm very blessed and grateful to help students along the way. On a personal note, my dad and sister are both alum. Growing up in my household, never a shortage of Drexel University t-shirts, and I'm telling you, you never know whose t-shirt would end up in your closet.
That's funny.
Thank you.
Hello,
Janae?
everybody. I'm Janae Morrison. I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate in the School of Education here. I don't know where to start. Undergrad, I went to Temple also. Graduated with a BA in Psychology and African American Studies. Then I did my master's at Temple as well, got it in urban education. I guess I didn't realize that I could even go to graduate school or get a PhD until I participated in a U.S. Department of Ed program called McNair Scholars, named for Ronald E. McNair. Don't quote me. But Ronald McNair was one of the astronauts who died on the space shuttle Challenger that blew up. So they created this program to help increase the number of underrepresented groups to get PhDs. So when I did that program, I was like, oh, okay, this is something that I could do. I'm first generation, so nobody in my family had ever gone to college or graduate school. So once I did that, I said, okay, cool. I got my master's, and I worked a little bit. Worked with Upward Bound, which is another U.S. Department of Ed program for high school students, preparing them for college. It really got me interested in seeing them go to college and what their experiences were when they got there. And a lot of them were leaving at the first and second year for a lot of different reasons. And so once I saw that, I said, okay, I want to study equity and access in higher ed, particularly focusing on underrepresented students. So when I got to Drexel, that was sort of my focus. I also had a really good experience at Temple Tokyo campus. I studied abroad there, and so when I got here, I said, okay, I want to look at equity and access, but I also want to have this sort of global focus. So my dissertation looks at the use of affirmative action in Brazilian universities, and I look at the policy through the perspective of the students, and also looking at sort of how they understand the policy and what their experiences are in this elite white space. Black students in particular in Brazil. I just got back in March, finished collecting my data, and now I'll be writing my dissertation. Hopefully I'll be graduating next June 2018.
Thank you, Jenny. Jasmine?
Hi everybody, my name's Jasmine George. I am currently doing undergrad here at Drexel, so I'm a BS-MS student. So the way that works is for the College of Engineering, my bachelor's degree is in chemical engineering, and at the same time I'm working in a master's degree program in material science and engineering. So I guess relatively young compared to the rest of the panel here. But that being said, it's been a great program. I think the reason why I primarily joined this program as early as my freshman year, I started looking at schools, and this was something I was interested in. And I found very unique to Drexel, a 5-year accelerated program where you get the most out of the time that you have at this university for your degrees, but also with the co-op program, it's a great real-world experience that you're also receiving at the same time. Currently, I am working on 2 projects. In regards to the chemical engineering side, a capstone project in which a group of students, including myself, we work on designing a chemical plant. This plant is actually being funded currently by the DOE, so we are working on helping out something that is actually going to be taking place in the next couple of years here. So if any of you are familiar with Shell at all, Shell is actually building a chemical plant out in Pittsburgh, so we're helping make their process more eco-friendly. On the material side of things here, so the graduate school side, I am currently actually working on my MS thesis. This originally started off as a co-op for me, so I was working with a professor over in material science in the dynamic characterization group. And I was working on naval vessels, so on behalf of the Navy, I was working on characterizing different phases of the materials that are important in determining how corrosion resistant the material would be. So eventually my love for that turned into a little bit of my thesis here, so currently working on finishing that up and writing and hopefully defending this June, so.
Nice. Congratulations, Jasmine.
Thank you.
See, I told you that our panelists, they are bringing a lot to the table, right? Right, we're ready for your questions right now, but let me ask you, if at all possible, when you ask your first question, at least identify yourself, first name, full name if you want that, and then maybe a little bit about your status, I mean, undergraduate, graduate, just about to start graduate school, whatever the situation is. And then if there's a particular panelist that you would like to direct your question to.
Dr.
Right.
Lim, can you turn
Hey, I'm going to switch
the
it off
screen?
right now,
Okay.
right? Yeah. All right, so let me get the first question. Anyone? Please.
My name is
Name.
DeWanda,
Wanda.
and I am graduating this summer from Drexel with my bachelor's degree in behavioral health counseling. So I applied early for the grad program so I could just go straight on in, and I got accepted, and that's where I'm going. Thank you. I guess my question is towards you.
Sure. Yes, Lindsay.
I'm inquiring about like different like grants for the program. I keep hearing the different grants that they may have for graduate school.
Sure. So for your program in particular, are you asking, or are you asking just generally speaking, grants and additional funding wise?
Just general.
Generally wise? Okay. What I'll do is after this is over, I'll definitely give you my business card so we can keep in touch. I do have a colleague that works directly with your programs. We each in our office represent certain programs, but we also can speak generally about all the programs. And his name is Evan. Make sure you get his information. But we do have an office, Drexel Center, I'm sure you're familiar with. But there is some good information out there about outside sources of funding. It might not necessarily be federal or institutional, but they are outside of Drexel University's community and universe, and they are things that you can absolutely apply for. You might have to do a little bit of extra work or fill out some forms, but there's definitely some things out there, and I'll share that with you.
Is there anybody else on the
Yeah,
panel who would like to add to that? No? All right, second question. Yes.
So I'm sorry. I'm Hollis. I'm a computer science major.
Woo!
At Drexel Junior. So I think my passion, at least for now, is to join the industry to make stuff for the world. And I'm wondering if grad school will add to that, Michael, or will it be like a waste of time?
That's a
And you do want to answer the question, right?
Because I heard from some other people saying that, well, if you want to be a coder, grad school is not necessarily a must. So
That's a really good question, and pretty specific to computer science, because it's the sort of field where you can make a lot of money and get a great job without a graduate degree. So, and I love that you started with talking about what kind of impact you want to have, and I think that's really where the focus is, and that's what it depends. If you think reflect more on what type of impact you want to have. You know, I've had friends who have gone to get a PhD in computer science because the research, they want to be on the cutting edge of research and have that kind of impact on the world, where they're putting out like self-driving cars, and they get snatched up by Google because they're doing research on the cutting edge and they're going to innovate. And I've had other friends who love being code monkeys and don't want to write a lot of papers, and which is involved in grad school. And I've had other friends who come back for a master's because they want to go into more of a managerial role, or they like project management and they want to advance. And so you can make more money or have a different type of role on a team by getting a master's, for example. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are things to think about in terms of graduate school options in computer science. And the other thing I would say is, since I talk to a lot of our students, a large chunk of our students in our college, especially their freshman year, start out in computer science because it's got the name recognition, right? We have other majors called information systems and data science and all the, and which doesn't mean anything to anybody, and sometimes even the faculty are sort of debating what the differences are between the majors. And so, but that's another thing as you take, which year did you say you are?
Junior.
You're a junior, yeah. So as you take classes, and that was one thing that I loved is my junior and senior years when I really started to specialize, and we all had to take the same classes freshman, sophomore year, and then when you have more flexibility in electives, you get to start playing around with some of the options in our college, and the variety of not only majors, but the types of coursework, and the faculty have, very different types of expertise that are available to you. So if something strikes your fancy and you take a class that's really interesting and you realize you want to specialize in cybersecurity or interface design or data science or something like that, that would be another reason where if you become, very few computer scientists are computer scientists. They're database administrators, or they're user experience researchers, or there's something a little bit more specific. And so that would be another reason that graduate school would help you, is that you would be that expert, and you would get to do more of what you love, and then you would be more valuable to whatever company wants to hire you, because you would be you wouldn't just be another developer on the team. You'd be senior developer, you'd be project manager, or you'd be the developer on the team who has expertise in blah.
Follow up.
Sure.
What about PhD versus master's in the context of?
Do you want to do research or do you not want to do research? That's a very...
I mean, you learn a lot by doing research.
Right. So research is a very unique sort of job and sort of thing to do. A PhD takes a long time and is not necessary, especially in computer science. And it's not always a fun process either. Like the process of getting PhD. I love my work and I love my job and I love my research, but nobody loves the process of getting a PhD. It's just not. That's not the point. Kind of like parenting, right? Nobody loves every part of parenting, but I hope they love their children. Poopy diapers and all, right? So anyway, you have to have a passion for research and a career trajectory in mind that's research focused. I've had friends who were in it, neck deep in the PhD process and realized, like, I just want to go code. Like, I don't want to write. I don't want to do this publishing thing. I don't want to put myself through all these hoops. Like, I'd rather just code. And so if that's you and you're, the process of research doesn't get you up in the morning, then the PhD is not worth it. If you're not sure, then I'd encourage you, like, it's the kind of thing that you're not going to know until you try. And partly because research is unique, and partly because we don't have cool TV shows about, like we do about doctors and lawyers, where they get to look cool, and you get to, know little kids like, oh, I'm going to grow up and be a researcher. Maybe scientists, they have like cool lab coats and glasses, but that's all we got, and that's usually a negative stereotype. So anyway, if the master's versus PhD, research versus not research, is something you're not quite sure about, it means you got to jump in, find a research project you're interested in, try it, talk to faculty, sit in on research group meetings, learn about the world of research, and then you'll know if it's for you or not.
Your follow-up question is general enough that I think I can ask Janae if you have something that you might like to contribute on that.
On whether or not the master's versus PhD, just in general?
Yeah. How did you decide that you're going to do a PhD rather than the master's?
So I kind of talked about how I would decide. I touched on a little bit in my introduction, but that is a good question. I mean, I did master's and PhD, so I'll say first that the PhD program that I'm in actually required that you have a master's degree to apply. And so that's one thing to consider. It depends on the program. So some programs you may need to have a master's degree. I think you said you went straight through,
Yep.
right? So it just depends on the program. For me personally, it just sort of, I got to the end of my bachelor's degree. I did McNair, which I was talking about, and I knew I wanted to eventually get a PhD. But I knew that I wasn't quite ready to start that journey at the end of my undergrad. So I was like, at the end, and I was just like, oh, what am I going to do? And I decided that I wanted to teach. So I just kind of scrambled around. I was like, let me just get into a teacher certification program really quickly. So I did that, and then I decided, I don't really like this program that much. Don't necessarily want to teach. Philadelphia Public Schools, just kind of not good. I was actually working on a grant with a professor doing some research in the public schools where the grad students were helping him. We were actually substitute teaching while he did like professional development with the teachers. So I got a taste of the classroom, and that's when I was just like, no. So I changed sort of midway through my master's degree, and I said, well, I do want to work with young people, but I don't necessarily want to teach in the classroom. So that's how I got to urban education. So when I finished urban ed, and I started working industry, I guess, if you want to call it that. And I did that for a number of years, maybe 5 years, before I actually decided, okay, now I'm going to go back and get the PhD. So I guess it just depends, that was sort of my path. I didn't really choose it, it just kind of happened. So I think it's just, person specific.
So I think my question's probably directed more towards Lindsey, maybe a bit of Amanda, because background I have here. I'm a nursing major. I'm in my third co-op right now in the emergency department at Penn Presbyterian. I guess my question would be, do you think it's more advantageous to continue right after doing your undergrad and getting your master's, or do you think it might be more profitable to have more work experience and then apply? I know different nursing graduate programs might require a year or two of experience before becoming a nurse practitioner, but just in general, what are your thoughts on working versus still?
It's such a common question.
It's a great question, and I think it's going to.
Amanda or Lindsey, whoever.
I think it's going to depend on who you are as a person and what your goals are. I know that just speaking from experience as both an admissions professional and somebody who eventually wanted to pursue a master's degree, when I got out of my undergraduate, I wanted hands-on work experience, and that was just me. And then I ended up doing my master's here at Drexel later on, and then I had the ability to work full-time here, and I was blessed that I was able to also enroll part-time as a communication master's student. So with that said, that's not the route that everybody takes, so, and I think it all depends on where you are and what your plans are, and I think it's also going to depend on the nature of the program itself. So all programs vary. Some of them lend itself very well from going right out of your undergraduate to your master's degree, and I think it varies on your program. With a program like yours, I think it would vary a little bit, but what I always suggest to students is we have excellent faculty members and program directors, and the Office of Graduate Admissions always helps facilitate putting students in contact with them, making those connections sort of early on, maybe now, so that you can start talking with the faculty and learn a little bit more about your specific program and what are students doing. But I think you'll find across the board, there's no one type of student for any program, so it all depends on the route that you want to take a little bit as well.
Okay, I guess like a bit of a follow-up question. If you
Sure.
did decide to go right after completing your undergraduate degree, when would you recommend starting that process? Would you say now or?
That's an excellent question. So I think that students who are currently wrapping up an undergraduate degree now, there's no better time than now. I think that once you figure it out, that's the route you want to do. I always tell students sooner rather than later, start making the connections with the admissions office, the faculty. You're here already in the Drexel network, so not a better place to be. So a lot of the application deadlines will vary depending on your program, but students are always sort of looking ahead. So we always tell students, even if an application deadline isn't until 5 months from now, it's better to get everything started. Of course, you might be looking at other schools or even other plans, so the sooner the better when it comes to that, but also keeping in mind the application deadline.
How do you make yourself attractive to the graduate school, Lindsey?
To the graduate school, I think it's going to depend on your submission holistically of all the application requirements. So some programs vary a little bit in terms of application requirements, but you're generally looking at your application, your admissions essay, recommendation letters will vary, but you're still always required them. Number will just vary. And then transcripts from all schools and universities. So I think in terms of what you can do, network with the people who are in the admissions office as well as in the faculty early on in the process, and just making sure that you're being very focused on who you're selecting for recommendation letters, as well as what you're putting out there in your resume and your essay. A lot of the information is already said. It's your academic history, it's on your transcript, but the things that you can definitely work on as far as shining if you want to put forth an extra step are always the essay, and really thinking hard and fast about who your recommendation writers would be. Yeah.
I definitely encourage you to talk to faculty about it too. I had, it made me so happy when I had a student who was doing really well in my class, and it took her, she was shy, so it took her until the end of the quarter to say, I'm applying for master's programs in your area. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best news ever. Like, come to my office, like let me see your list. And we went through her list, and it's a really small world. Like, students don't often realize this. We all go to, you know, our research communities tend to be very small. We're like international and national, like we know each other. And so going through her list, I said, oh yeah, my friend from grad school is there. Let me look her up. Oh, she happens to be running graduate admissions of this program. Let me introduce you to her. You know, what's your other school? Oh yeah, my, you know, collaborators over there. Let me introduce you to them. And let me look at your essay, and let me see how you're, so, yeah, that totally floats our boat to be able to help you with that. And there's a lot of different types of knowledge we can that you can tap into. You know, our professional networks, often we've probably participated in the admissions process as well, and we can help you look at drafts of your, you know, we've written essays, we've gotten into graduate school, we write grants, we know how to make things sound good. So we're happy to help you look at drafts and things like that. So. And then the other part, of course, is helping to figure out what the right program is for you. Insider knowledge helps a lot. You know, I can tell you, based on people that I know at different universities or universities that I applied to when I was applying to graduate school, or when I gave a talk over there, and what the culture seemed like to me. And as you're trying to figure out maybe what particular program or what thing you want to study, having somebody to bounce ideas off of and give you sort of feedback on that. So. Your faculty are a great resource.
One bit of advice: start early. Make sure that you meet all deadlines. Some schools are very particular about it. The deadline for submission is May the 1st. It's May the 1st.
I also wanted to add from the perspective of if you decide to work, check in with yourself and make sure you're not burned out, because healthcare training is really grueling. And that, if you're really passionate, that'll get you through. So I've had friends who are nursing students and want to do nurse practitioners and have done it both ways. And if it's going to be really hard if you're not ready to like still be in school. And if you work, like you were saying, when I took off and worked before I applied to medical school because I wasn't quite ready to apply and go through the grueling application process. And those mentors that I found have been lifelong mentors and wrote my recommendations. So just have a plan, whichever way you go will work out.
So yeah, give you another chance. Yeah.
To mention connections, this is actually my first time hearing you can do connections in grad school admission process, because I thought the only way you can get into a program is through admissions, and there was no like edge cases. But what is it? Is it like a, I don't know, some private admission?
No, it's like different flavors of programs, right? Where I might tell you, oh, this program is really heavy in this particular, or has this sort of focus. And so you want to be able to prove like how technical you are. And you want to talk about your technical skills. Whereas this one wants to know that you're more well-rounded and that you have technical skills, but you also have soft skills. And it's not just about the admissions process, it's also as you're figuring out which program is right for you. Sometimes just looking at the websites is not informative. You know, I'm sure you went through this when you applied to college, visiting campuses, you know, and meeting people. makes a big difference. So that kind of insider knowledge can just tell you just like when you're applying to companies too, right? Like what's the culture really like, and what is the experience really like?
I want to add to that. I think I'll just talk about Drexel, the School of Education. So with the PhD program, they kind of forced us to make connections in a way. So as part of the application requirement, you had to reach out to faculty members who you would wanted to work with, and so luckily they were really personable, really open, and got right back to me. So that was like a first step in the application process. Before you even send anything in, you already had to make a connection with professor or professors. So I think that was just really helpful in sort of getting to know the first line of getting to know the program and whether or not it would be right for me. Because I will name another university that I tried to do that with and I never got a response. So it just was really nice to know that, okay, once I did have that application in, I already had connected with 2 professors and that we were already constantly communicating before the application process was even over. So that was really helpful.
Can I add something? And I'm on the panel. But it doesn't stop me. I would just add, so this is where talking to people in your discipline really matters, and knowing something about the culture really matters. So for a master's degree program, maybe not. Maybe it's just there's a departmental committee and they do admissions. It's not going to be the way it was when you're getting into undergrad, where somebody in a main office is deciding for all the departments. It's more likely to be the case that an individual department is deciding who they're letting in or not. They might have a number that they're allowed to make offers to, but they have more discretion there. But then from there, it varies by discipline. So Chris says that in econ, that sort of contacting people before you're there is not really a thing, but in political science, which is my field, it is. So having those conversations with your professors now to know whether you should be doing networking, whether you should be connecting people so that you're not getting off on the wrong foot is really important.
You're great.
In particular, if you're going into a PhD program where you need to get financial support, right? And most of the time that financial support will have to come through a grant that the professor has. You need to know who it is who has the money to support you. And so you do have to have that connection there at the time that you apply, so that the person who you're likely to be working with knows that, look, you are interested in coming to the school, in coming to work with him, and then this or her, and then they'll take a look at your background and find out whether there's a match. And if there is, they'll just tell the graduate advisor in the department, look, this is the person that I want, please accept so and so.
Yeah, so that admissions process is very different, whereas with undergrads, like we as a college, so like Drexel lets us know, all right, here's your incoming class of freshmen, but we control the PhD process, and it's a lot more about the match to the advisor. Mm-hmm. And if the advisor has the funding and knows you and wants you, you're not necessarily guaranteed a spot, but they may have a lot more sway to get you admitted.
And this is for PhD,
not so much
correct.
For the masters.
Correct. Yeah, because masters, right? But everything about your PhD is dependent on your advisor. I highly recommend PhD Comics. It's sort of like a marriage. You're like stuck with each other forever, and your lives are dependent on each other. So finding the right advice when you're applying to PhD programs, the university, the program, the city, not as important as your advisor, who you're going to be dependent on to survive. So that match is crucial. So it's especially important to reach out, use your network. It's not just about a good match in terms of research interests for your advisor. You also need to personally get along with them, because you're gonna 5+ years of very close collaboration. You have to get along.
It's also true that you pay to get a master's.
Yes.
With the PhD, you get paid. Not very much.
We pay you. Not a lot, but we pay you. Yeah, to get a PhD.
More questions? Yeah.
Sean, rising senior, graduating next March. Some of my questions were already answered. I know that I'm highly looking into pursuing a MBA, so I've already been started looking at grad schools. So the conversation about some applicants wanting 2 to 5 years of prior experience before applying, other universities saying know we have 20 to 50% of our popular or applicant pool coming straight from undergraduate studies. And then you have the whole test taking GRE versus GMAT. So I guess from an MBA perspective, first question would be GRE, GMAT, even if the university says they accept both, which one would be more of a heavier influence or more geared to take?
Lindsey?
Sure, I'd be able to answer that. So what I always tell students, no matter what program you're applying for, whether it's the MBA or another program, whatever it may be, is if you are applying to a program that doesn't necessarily have an application requirement and you've taken it for this whole other list of schools, then send everything that you have. The committee will look at everything you send plus more. So as long as you're definitely meeting the minimum requirements of sending in everything that's required of you, if an additional recommendation letter comes in, that can only benefit you. If it doesn't ask for test scores and you send in your GREs that you've taken for 3 other schools, send it in. I'm not sure if that directly answers your questions about the MBA, but it sounds like, and I'm sure you're looking at other schools as well. So always just making a list of all the application requirements for all the schools, and if a school is saying either or, it truly means either or. I work directly with the psychology PhD program and the MS program. They're both highly competitive programs on campus on the College of Arts and Sciences, and they recommend the GRE subject test. And a lot of applicants, I get the question, are you required to take it? And I tell students, if you've taken it and you are even slightly satisfied with your score because you've taken it for other schools, absolutely. If you feel that you're on a time crunch and meeting the deadline is more important for December 1, which comes up very soon when you're very busy, then, kind of leave it as is. So really the requirements are what they are. If you send more information, that's great. The problem becomes when you don't send your information in and your file is incomplete at the deadline. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Going back to the question of whether one should, go out, find work, get some experience, and then come back to graduate school, or to go to graduate school right away. The tendency usually is for people to, say, oh, well, I'm not ready to go on, to have more hurt, right, by going to take classes and getting a master's degree. I better go out, work, earn some money. You'll find that for people like that, it's much more difficult to come back to academia. Because you're making $50,000 a year or $60,000 a year. You come back, even if you're a PhD student, you're only going to be paid $25,000, right? It's a big drop in your standard of living. And then there are all these other distractions. You go out and work, you meet somebody who is now your best friends forever, you may get married, all these issues become important issues at that point. Whereas they are not if you decide to go to graduate school right away. I'm not saying that there's a right way and there's a wrong way, but these are the things that you should keep in mind. I've had a number of students who decided that they would come do a master's here. And then after 1 year, they said, fine, look, I'm going to go out to work, but I'll come back. 5 years later, are they back? No. 10 years later, are they back? No. Because, as I said, it's very difficult to throw away all these distractions and the standard of living issue and say, yeah, I'm ready to come back and do graduate school at that time.
Can I ask
Yeah,
one thing?
jump on.
Sorry, I'm not on the panel either.
Right.
Meredith started it. So, I think for some programs, especially MBA, sometimes you need the experience to bring it back to school.
Right.
You can do case studies and you can read and take examples from faculty who have experience, but in some cases, yes, it's hard to go back to school, but sometimes you need that. I know when I was getting my MBA, I didn't have much experience, and my classmates could use these really cool examples or write papers or do projects on their work and then bring it back the next day. So it really just depends on what you want to get out of it or what the program is.
Yeah.
I need a question.
Oh, question.
Yeah. So I agree that grad school is terrible. It's not fun. Sorry, not fun. It's not necessarily, getting a PhD is not necessarily a fun experience. But can be intrinsically rewarding.
Yes.
Right. So it's like hard work, but for something you love. I guess I'm wondering if I wish somebody had told me that before. So is there any advice that you wish you had gotten, like sort of something that you weren't expecting about being a graduate student that we might sort of be able to tell people?
Amanda? No.
I wish I had known that I would be studying pretty much 9 to 5 plus as like an overtime job. And to be fair though, when people tell you that, you'd be like, yeah, whatever, I can handle it. But I think it's important to know. I can't speak to other programs, but that's how med school is. And then you go out into the clinic, and then you are working an overtime job and not getting paid for it. So that's why I think that you have to be really passionate about why you want to go into medicine or whatever graduate field. Like, that's where the core of it is, in my opinion.
Brianna, can I add to that?
Yeah, I think I used to think that graduate school was for like the smartest people, and the people that didn't finish or that would drop out were like the ones that couldn't cut it and that weren't good enough or weren't smart enough. And then what I realized when I was in it is that it's either the right fit or it's not. And the people who don't finish, I've had friends who did not finish the program and went off to Silicon Valley and got great jobs and had babies and realized that like, oh, I don't actually need this PhD thing. It sounded like a good idea. It's not the kind of thing you do because grad school is not the kind of thing you do just like because it sounds like a good idea. Like it's not. All of us probably have something to prove. You're probably doing it because you have something to prove. We're all a little weird that way, and that's okay, as long as you find it in the right field that's right for you. So that was really interesting to me, is that the people who were successful and who got in and who finished and got their degrees were not necessarily like the smartest or the best. It was the ones that were passionate about it and that had the persistence and had the were able to put in the long hours and had the right end goal to make it through that miserable, challenging process.
Yeah, for me, I think as a person of color, I really wish that somebody would have told me that there's like an unwritten sort of rule book that I had to figure out, that I had no idea what it was until I got here. And luckily, I had some friends who were sort of in the process ahead of me, so they were getting their PhDs and some of them were finishing, who are also women of color, and so it was nice to sort of bounce things off of them. But we all were just like, these are like, there's just this unwritten rules that we just had no idea existed. And so I just wish that somebody would have gave me that rule book ahead of time.
Yeah.
You should write it.
Right. Good idea.
Yeah.
I think maybe this to Amanda or anybody else who it's relevant to, but what are your thoughts on, because if I do stay, like my question really is because like if I do stay in emergency care and they make you have experience before getting a master's, what are your thoughts on working part-time while pursuing your master's and PhD or higher education? Because you discussed time management. What do you think about like the possibility of that?
So I actually did do that for my master's, and I think that was actually helpful to, like you said, get a little bit of experience but not totally be disconnected from academia. It depends on the program. So my master's was a humanities program, and that is a little easier depending on your strengths to manage your time versus like say some of the hard science work. It's just more hours, so it just depends on the program. But it does keep you connected, and I think that's good because it keeps you focused on that academic goal.
In my field, I do not recommend it for a PhD. Part-time PhD just sounds like a bad idea. Like, it's already hard enough to get it done within 5 years of your life. I cannot, and I've seen students that are part-time just hanging on, decade for a decade, and like, it's hard enough full-time. Leah's taking a picture of our panel. So I don't know, maybe in other fields it makes sense, or with the right situation or the right job, or but for me, for a PhD, I would not recommend it for a PhD, part-time PhD.
And most graduate schools would not recommend it or accept it, because they feel that, look, it's a commitment. I mean, if you want to get a PhD, you've got to be there 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 days a week, 10 days, 7 days a week. That's kind of 10 days a week, right?
And it's hard enough.
Feels that way, right? 10 days a week.
Yeah. Like, I'm working with my PhD student right now to pick a topic, and like getting him to focus, like the mountain of literature that he's in, and he doesn't even have a lot of classes this quarter. And it's just that, like, just the process of going through that mountain of literature and picking a topic and identifying that gap and saying, here's the contribution I'm going to make with my dissertation. you do, like, I don't even know how people with kids do it. Like, the least amount of distractions will make your life easier to actually complete the PhD.
Yeah.
But you know what? We do have somebody here in the audience who actually did his degree whilst he was still fully employed, full-time in my office, and that's Taz. So maybe Taz, you want to give your,
Yeah, I think for me, I think there's just a lot of pressure because I come from a family where, you have to go to school, you gotta get this, you gotta get this, so I didn't want to disappoint my family, especially being the only child. So, coming from a Chinese traditional family, I was kind of forced to, get your master's right away, you really don't have a choice, I feel, so, and I was lucky enough because at the time I was working, with Dr. Lin in the Graduate Studies Office, and so I could this, tuition remission benefits. So I took advantage of it, and that's one of the reasons why I went directly to, for my master's and then my professional doctorates.
Nice.
But I agree with the panelists. You really have to have the discipline, and also motivation to do it because no one's going to guide you. So you really guiding yourself in this process for the most part.
Those are great points, and just to elaborate from an admission standpoint and a personal standpoint as well, some of the master's programs will be a little more flexible when it comes to the part-time and full-time option, so I don't want anybody to leave here thinking that there isn't that flexibility. I can speak from experience. It took me 4 full years to complete my master's degree. I completed it part-time. I'm very proud of that as well. I wouldn't have had it any other way. During that time, I worked at Drexel. I think it's a really rewarding workplace, and also during that same time, I bought a house and got married, so lots of stuff happened during that time, and it all worked out well.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice, apart from getting good grades on the standardized tests, towards the admissions process? Is there any other things we can do to improve the application?
Sure. Just to speak from my experience working in the Office of Graduate Admissions, what I always tell students is there's a certain amount of work that you've already done that's behind you. Your transcripts will speak well of your academic experience, so they will say that all. And if you've taken tests, I know that some of us are better test takers than others. That's sort of what they are. I encourage students to take them multiple times, but it comes a certain point where the standardized tests are what they are, depending on the competitive level of certain schools. Some schools have higher thresholds than others, and that's definitely important to keep in mind. However, there are certain things that you can really think hard about, and those are choosing your recommenders, as I was saying a little bit earlier. And I think thinking about who in your academic and professional world in leadership roles have guided, mentored you, and can speak very highly about your experience. So really thinking about that, that's something that you can definitely work hard to select, as well as your admissions essay. I know several panelists have also said that use your network to really look at your essay for improvements on not only the content but the grammar. A lot of people, you will be surprised how much they overlook something simple as grammar, but just paying attention to those finer lines is what I would say. And I really think that your resume will speak a lot about you too. Your GPA is not going to tell everything about all the community outreach you might have done, some jobs you might have held during college, anything else special about you that sets you apart.
Yes.
How can we get connected to the right faculty member at Drexel to help us?
Sure, that's a great question. I would always encourage students to reach out to the Office of Graduate Admissions. We're sort of the gateway to all of the programs and the faculty members. Like I said earlier, I work primarily with the College of Arts and Sciences and the programs in the Media Arts and Design School here. I speak with them regularly, so I would say that we're your best entry point to making those connections with the faculty. And the faculty are really great. They're passionate people who love what they do, and they love sharing that with students at all levels, whether you're enrolled in the program or whether you're a prospective student. And I always tell students, the graduate admissions committees within all the academic departments are really looking at your application. It's much different than the undergraduate ball game. So it's committees of individuals who are professionals in the field that are making those decisions. But really making those connections, networking up front will really help you in the long run.
I think there's a lot of entry points. You just start talking to different people, look at different programs, websites, so our college or our department will have a list of faculty specializing in a certain area, or an alphabetical list of faculty with keywords about their areas of interest. So just look around, and when you find somebody who piques your interest, reach out, send them an email, faculty or people too. Some of them are more responsive than others. Be persistent, don't take it personally. If they haven't responded in a week or two, it's okay to send a follow-up email and try again. I love talking with students. If you send me an email, cool, I will set up a meeting with you, come to my office, we'll chat. If you catch me on a bad week or if I'm traveling, then I might not respond to your email and I'll feel really bad. And if you nag me later, I'll say, oh my God, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for nudging the email back up. So most faculty are excited to talk to you and will respond. Another great way is people like academic advisors or staff or other students like talk around. Students who are in a program or have graduated from a program, they'll tell you who like the coolest, most interesting faculty are that will talk with you, right? Faculty also know each other really well and know their program really well. So if you come to me and you say you're really interested in something, I'll send you to my friend Jake, who's the data science guy and does this really cool stuff, and I'll walk you over to his office. So just people know each other, and if you start talking to whoever will listen about like, I'm really interested in this, then they'll say, oh, well, have you talked to this person? Or like, I heard of this person working on this project.
If you're looking for faculty within the school that you are in right now, the quickest way to come up with names is to talk to your friends, take courses that are being offered by people who you would like to know, do well in these courses, and then maybe even work on a project with these professors. And then once you've got to know them, they will be an absolutely great resource for you, because they will let you know, look, Walton is good for this, and I know so and I'll be very happy to write on your behalf, and get this guy to be interested in your application. That kind of thing. So work on that as well, not only on the faculty outside of the institution, but within here. Yes.
Yes. I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about fit, and when you visit a program or when you're reaching out to people, how you can gauge fit, and sort of what factors they might be thinking about.
Good question.
That is a really good question. I guess I'll start with that. So I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I just had a crazy idea when I was applying to. No, not applying to doctoral programs. I decided I was going to apply to this one program. And I did it, but I didn't get in. And my plan was that if I didn't get in, I would just, whatever, I'll just do something else with my life. But I actually sort of stumbled upon Drexel's program, and after the rejection. And so I said, you know what, the deadline hasn't passed yet. Let me just put all my stuff in there. And so, like I was talking about earlier, one stipulation of the application process was to connect with some professors in the department. And so I was looking, I did the internet search. I was, looking at faculty, looked at their research, what were they working on. And actually, there's a faculty member who is my dissertation chair now, Rebecca Clothy, who worked on access and equity in higher ed in China. And I was like, oh, this is like me. And this is exactly what I wanted to do. And so that was sort of like the first, entryway to fit, right? And so that was awesome. And so when I got in and actually met her, it just worked out. Now, I will say, when I got to Drexel, coming from Temple, I was a little culture shocked in terms of like the diversity here, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to survive this PhD program here at Drexel with people that don't look like me. But it actually worked out to where, it has been really cool. It's been a really good experience. So at first, the initial fit with my dissertation chair was like perfect, but like Drexel as a culture was a little like, but now I'm in my 4th year, so I've survived, even though I thought I wouldn't. So I think part of it was just giving it some time too. So it wasn't just like an initial, like, I just know that this is the perfect place for me. But giving it that time and being patient, I actually found my space here, and it's been cool, and I'm ready to get out next year.
4 years is enough, right?
Yeah, but I'm taking one more year, 5 years.
Yeah.
I just wanted to preface before I answer that the process for medical school applications is a little bit different. So you're gonna put out I don't know if anyone in this room is interested, but you put out a ton of applications and you get maybe a handful of interviews, and maybe one acceptance. But given that, I had the opportunity to choose between like 2 or 3 schools. So what I would say, and this I think broadly applies, is that talk to the students. Do you like the students? They're going to be your peers. Do you like the professors? You get, for us, because it's a whole day interview, you get one day, but it's just the cultures are very different in different institutions. Also, sometimes some institutions are very research focused, and if that's something you're really excited about, like that's a good thing to think about too. And the facilities too. I think that's the lowest thing I would say, because you're gonna, at least for me, you're gonna spend a lot of time in your facility, but
In one building.
Brianna? Add to that?
Yeah, well, what was I gonna say?
Fit.
About fit. Yeah, I think talking to people and listening to other people's perceptions of the culture, whether they're current students, whether they're again, it's a small world, so we usually know each other and each other's programs. So I remember when I was applying to graduate programs, I had a list of like top 3 to 5, and I knew it was going to be one of those. And when it came down to it, another part of the PhD process, not only do they pay you, but they fly you out and they wine you and dine you. It's like a job interview where once you're accepted, and I was encouraged to go to all of these. And it was wonderful traveling around the country and just being wined and dined in in a bunch of cities all over the place. And they try to sell you on the program, the university, the city, all the above. Especially Pittsburgh, because people think that Pittsburgh's not that great, and it's awesome once you actually visit. So, but I remember my undergrad mentor and advisor telling me, "You're not going to go to Carnegie Mellon. Like, you're going to hate Carnegie Mellon. You're not going to go there." But it was one of the top programs, so I applied, and I'd visited other programs, and I liked it, and I was pretty sure. But I said, "All right, well, this is my last visit, so I'll just start going to see this Carnegie Mellon thing." And I fell in love, and she was totally wrong. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I realized the reason she said that is because she knew that my heart was in qualitative research, which made me not, in certain ways, a great fit for Carnegie Mellon, which is very quantitative. From computer science to psychology, they're like very, very quant people. And so in some ways, it was an uphill battle to just do a qualitative dissertation. I had the advisors are so important. I was co-advised by 2 amazing advisors. I was told once I got there, if you're going to do qualitative research, there's one person you're going to have to work with. And she supported me the whole way. So, but that was still useful. Even though I made that decision, I decided she was wrong and it was a great fit for me. When I hit some roadblocks, which you're going to hit during grad school, I thought, this is what she meant. And this is okay. And this is why I'm getting this pushback. And it made me all the tougher than now, because as a qualitative researcher in any field, you sort of get blowback and you learn to defend yourself. And so another part that I hated about grad school is always having to defend myself. And they would always say, but what's your hypothesis and where's your p-value? And I was like, it's not really a thing. And I would just go grounded theory, and they go, okay, fine. If I just say grounded theory, we all feel better. So it was that process was not fun, but it made me so good that as soon as I walk into a room and I realize this person, I'm gonna have to get their buy-in, then I know to say grounded theory and to go this and that and to sort of usher them into so I do this qualitative stuff. It's gonna feel a little uncomfortable, but trust me, it is science, and I know what I'm doing. So it made me a lot better in my job now. After I got through it.
On that uplifting note, we had to close the session because we had to clear out of here for the next
2 minutes to clear out.
Use it. I want to thank you very much for coming to this session and for asking your great questions. And will you now join me in thanking the panel for some of the questions?
Thank you.